Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Molly. I'm a mum here in the UK of 2 children. My husband and I have a biological 4-year-old daughter, and last year we brought home our beautiful little boy through the UK adoption process. Today's video I'm doing a Q&A because I put a question up on Instagram to see if anybody had anything they wanted to ask, and I was inundated with questions, so I've picked 10. I've tried to pick some of the more common ones, but it might be that I have to do a video later on covering some of the other ones. First question, when are you going to tell your son he is adopted? So a really good question. I feel that generally there's a really big myth that adopted children shouldn't know they're adopted, and a lot of TVs show this where children find out they're adopted and it's a big breakdown. In real life that is probably what would happen. It would probably cause a bit of an identity crisis for a little one. So our son, we're already telling him that he's adopted. Although he's pre-verbal, it's in conversation every day. Our 4-year-old always speaks about foster carers and tummy mummies, which is birth family, about how we adopted him. She tells her friends. So it's very much an open conversation in the home anyway. And we really want to keep it open so that he's really confident in who he is, where he's come from, his identity. We want him to be able to, as best as possible, navigate his adoptive identity with his birth identity, almost to make it whole, so that he can be confident in all those pieces of his jigsaw fitting together, knowing as much as possible so that he can kind of process everything he has been through. So that is our hope. If you do have adoption training and you're going through the adoption process, you will also receive a lot of training on identity and the importance of letting your little one know that they are adopted as soon as they are able to kind of understand that. Did you have concerns about loving your biological child more than your adopted child? Yes, and this is such a common and normal concern. I get a lot of messages about this from people who are adopting with biological children, and it's definitely something that, crossed through mine and my husband's mind. For me personally, I always felt that I had the capacity to love a child that was not biologically mine. My husband was very sceptical, very nervous. It was something that we talked about with our social worker a lot. I think we even spoke about it in panel as well, but we were very realistic in our expectations. We had a mindset that we weren't going to meet our little boy and instantly fall in love. We were very realistic and kind of set the expectation that we will meet him, we'll bring him home, and that attachment, that love and that relationship will grow. And that's exactly what it did. I will say that in the beginning I had very different loves for my biological daughter and my son. I definitely loved them both, but in very different ways. But over half a year later after placement, I can honestly say that there is no difference in my levels of love anyway. There's no difference in how much I love them both. I honestly forget that my little man's adopted half the time because he just absolutely melts our hearts. What did your support network look like going through the adoption process? So support network is huge in the adoption process, because obviously social workers want to know who's going to support you when you have a bad day or challenging times or childcare, for example. So me and my husband were very lucky. We live where we've always grown up and been raised, so we have a lot of family locally. We have good friends locally. We're very active within our community. We have good relationships with schools and nurseries, churches, local businesses, medical staff, and our employers, for example. So our support network was pretty vast. However, I don't want to panic anyone. You can always build a support network through Zoom or FaceTime. It can even be people like your neighbours. Our neighbours are part of our support network, especially in emergencies. But pre-adoption, we didn't have any adoption-related support network. So when we were going through the adoption process, we really tried to build that. So we joined our Adoption UK community group and met a lot of foster carers and adopters through that. We found people who had adopted or were adopting locally, so we started to meet with them and ask their advice and build a relationship with them. We met lots of people in our prospective adopter training and keep in touch with them, and obviously our agency and our little man's local authority are also a really good arm of support. So that is what our support network generally looks like. It was quite big, but don't let that worry you. Support networks come in all different shapes and sizes. If you could go back in time to stage 1 and tell yourself something, what would it be? I would tell myself to take a chill pill, because in stage 1 I was a wreck. I was a panicker. I was just so eager to go but so anxious and wanting to get everything done. I would tell myself to relax, But equally, I would tell myself to focus on independent learning. So stage 1 is hard because there's a lot of waiting. You're waiting for a lot of checks to come back. There's not really much that you as a prospective adopter can do. It's definitely not as intense as stage 2. So I would just tell myself to focus on researching, learning as much as possible and building my learning log, not only to prepare me for stage 2, but also so that I have a really nice learning log to take to panel. I definitely did focus on a learning log, but I feel like I could have ploughed a lot more of my time into it instead of worrying. How did you know you were ready to adopt? So I like this question. I have covered a little bit of this in my adopting after baby loss video, which I'll link down below if you're interested. So I knew for many reasons. I had, in a nutshell, a horrifically awful traumatic pregnancy and birth with my daughter, and I had suffered baby loss around that as well. So the thought of hospitals and needles, or even the thought of being pregnant, made me feel a bit sick. I'd always kind of had in my head I'd have one child, I was done with children, and then my big girl asked for a sibling and the mum guilt took over, and I thought, oh gosh, okay, let's think about this properly. How can we do this in the best kind of emotionally supportive way for all three of us? And I knew we were ready to adopt as soon as I started researching it, because I was so excited. I generally had those butterflies of excitement that you get when you're anticipating something really positive. I knew the moment I knew I was ready was when we'd attended our adoption information evening with our agency. I came out feeling on cloud 9. That pressure of having to have a biological child on me and my mind and my body just went out of the window, and I felt like a weight had been lifted on my shoulders. And because of that, and my husband seeing that in me as well, we just knew it was right. We knew we were ready, and it was in our gut, and we trusted our gut instinct, and we were so right. So I do just want to say that a lot of people always don't know if they're ready, and I certainly have a lot of friends within the UK adoption community who have adopted who didn't know they were ready. They just kind of went to a lot of information evenings, did a lot of research, and gradually built into the process themselves, and that's fine as well. There might not be a time when you personally are ready. It is different for everybody. What are your thoughts on changing your little man's name after adoption? So again, this is a topic that comes up generally in society as well. A lot of people asked us, what are you going to change his name to? Did you name him that, or did he come with that name? And after all of the adoption training that we had, we knew that we did not want to change his name. He knew his name. He was responding to his name, even though he was very, very small and young. It was a huge part of his identity. And for our aim in him being confident in who he is and his identity, we were very adamant that we would not change his name. It is very much encouraged and advised not to change an adopted child's name for identity reasons. Now, some people can be advised to change a name if it does make that child identifiable. So if a child has a birth name that is incredibly identifiable within your local area, then it may be that a social worker agrees it is the safest option to change that child's name. I certainly know a lot of cases where that has happened, but it generally is encouraged not to do it. And I could do a whole other video on that, but for us, we definitely did not have any intentions on changing our little man's name. You can always add middle names. That's what we've decided to do. We've kept his birth name, but we've added a name of our own, and I think his name in total is just incredibly special. You tell your son that he's adopted, but do you tell other people that he is adopted? So yes, in our house, adoption is celebrated. We embrace it. We don't go around shouting it locally from the rooftops, but it does come up into conversation. You know, for example, if I'm having a conversation with someone and they ask me about how my labour was with him, I will say, oh, actually, well, we adopted him. And then they ask a million questions and I try and stay positive, and it's a great conversation. We want him to know that we celebrate that we love him just as he is, and that we love how he came to be a part of our family. We are so proud that adoption is a part of our lives, and that, you know, we've extended our family through adoption. We are just on cloud 9 with it. We've had the best experience so far. And so if people do ask any questions, then yes, we are happy to answer them. Hopefully educate some people more about the positives of adoption and beat some of those negative myths and stigmas as well. We try not to go around like plastering the fact that he's adopted, because when he's older we don't want him to kind of like label himself as the adopted child. We just want him to feel accepted and loved and included. But where appropriate, we definitely do tell people he's adopted. like I said, we want him to be proud of that as well, and not just us. Are you going back to work after adoption leave? How do you feel about your little man doing nursery? So the plan so far is yes, I will be going back to work. I will have had about 10-11 months off on adoption leave in total. I am planning on going back full time because that's what I've always done with my daughter, but I am very flexible in that because I know that our little man may not settle that well into childcare. So the plan is for him to go to nursery. My daughter did nursery full time from 9 months, but my daughter doesn't have any attachment issues. So this was actually asked at panel. They asked us, you've got plans for full-time nursery, what if he doesn't settle? And so we've always been of the mindset that one of us may need to go part-time, we might need to be flexible with our hours, we might have to kind of get support network in to maybe have him a day a week, or one of us might just not have to work. It's completely out in the open at the minute. I would hope that he settles well. We have started a very, very long settling in process to nursery, so I don't go back to work until like spring, summertime. And so we're starting visits now, weekly, so he'll have had so many visits. But we've done that in the hope that he will build up the comfort levels slowly. He'll get the idea that I come back for him, that daddy comes back and picks him up. His big sister's there as well outside of preschool, so that's certainly a big help. But he's starting to make little friends. He seems comfortable around the staff, but I think a visit of an hour is a lot different to 40 hours a week. So we'll see. We'll see. It's very flexible and we will totally be child-led on this. How did you whittle down the children's profiles you were looking for and how prescriptive were you? So a matching criteria question. We were really confident with our matching criteria. We certainly said a no to a lot of things and that's absolutely fine. So our social worker gave us a big form with age, gender and a list of additional needs that we were or were not comfortable with. We just ticked yes or no. And I will be honest, we ticked no to a lot. And the main reason for doing that was because we wanted to be able to parent both of our children with an equal split. We didn't want to adopt a child that required 80% of our time, where we were only giving 20% of our time to our biological daughter. We didn't think that would be fair as parents. So we were pretty prescriptive, and there should be no judgment there. You have to be really confident in the needs that you are going to be dealing with, because the last thing anybody wants is a placement breakdown, and that adoption breaking down, it's really the last option anybody wants. So we were pretty prescriptive. And in terms of whittling down children's profiles, once we had our matching criteria and we knew what kind of child we were looking for, we would input that into LinkMaker, which if you don't know what that is, check out my family finding video. Or our social worker would also kind of know the matching criteria of potential children when she was looking at profiles from other social workers. So we only ended up having 2 profiles, one on LinkMaker, one that our social worker sent us, and the one that our social worker sent us was our little boy. Last one, did you constantly worry that you weren't going to be approved as adopters at panel? Yes. Oh, this was a huge fear for me for 6 months. I was terrified. I did everything in my power to do every single thing right and do as much research and as much learning as possible. I tried to be teacher's pet in training. I did everything. But I think it's generally a fear. You want something so much that you just believe that something is bound to go wrong. And for us, the process was going so well and we were loving it so much that for us, we only knew bad, negative things happening in terms of having children. So we were constantly worrying, but our social worker reassured us. I constantly had chats with her. I would email her if I was struggling. She would give me a phone. And she would reassure us. And I do just want to say, a social worker would not take you to panel if they were not confident that you were going to get approved. You would not get that far if they didn't think that you were suitable to adopt, because it's a waste of an agency's time and it's a waste of your time. So you will have a very good idea if you're going to be approved. And honestly, looking back at panel, it was one of the best experiences ever. I don't know what I was worried about, but it's just one of those things. I hope that video has been helpful for some of you. I hope it's given you some insight and some reassurance in some areas. If you do have any more questions that you want me to cover in the future, you can find me on Instagram at MollyMamaAdopt, or just comment down below and I will make a note of it for next time. Please also subscribe to my channel for more adoption related content. I will try and film some more videos, but having 2 kids at home in national lockdown is not easy, so I'll try and make the most of my time while I can, but I can't promise anything. Thank you for watching, guys. Bye!